in almost geometrically black and white terms. They try to treat history as an exact science. They try to deduce from the study of history some unique plan of action guaranteed to make men free, equal, happy, and good. In this very dogmatic and very intolerant milieu, Hess allowed himself to doubt whether any single solution could ever in principle achieve this, unless and until the men who built the new world themselves lived by the principles of justice and were filled with benevolence towards individual human beings, not merely humanity at large. That is to say, only when they possessed characters and outlooks which no amount of political reform could by itself secure. It is surely a sign of immaturity, however noble, however disinterested, to stake everything on some final solution to social problems. When to such immaturity there is added a ruthless will and a genius for organization which enables their possessors to force human beings into patterns not related to their nature and their wishes, then usually what starts as pure and disinterested idealism ends in cruelty and blood. A sense of symmetry and regularity and a gift for vigorous deduction, which is a prerequisite of some of the natural sciences, may gravely mislead in the field of social arrangements and lead to appalling bullying on one side and dreadful suffering on the other. Even at the unavoidable price of being denounced for foolishness and idealism by his admired despotic friends, Marx and Engels, Hess couldn't bring himself to view the world through their distorted spectacles. He believed in the permanent validity of certain general human values. He believed to the end of his days that human feeling, natural affection, desire for social justice, individual freedom, for solidarity with historically continuous groups, families, religious associations, nationalities, were to be valued as being good in themselves. He didn't believe that these deep human interests were necessarily altered by historical evolution, or conditioned by class consciousness, or by other transient phenomena. As for the relative value and importance to be attributed to the desire for national independence, surely one could say that recent events, even in Hungary and Poland recently, show, if nothing else, that orthodox Marxist interpretation of what national solidarity is and what influence it has even upon the working class of countries no longer capitalist contains grave fallacies which we have all experienced to our cost. This is only the most recent and spectacular example of what Hess saw very clearly and without the slightest trace of chauvinism or morbid nationalism. And that, which is very surprising after all, in the context of extreme left-wing socialism, of which he was one of the most purest and most devoted and most lifelong proponents. Consequently, I think that even his claims as a socialist, as against his critics, are not too difficult to sustain today, and his significance has been underestimated mainly by Marxists, to the greater glory of their own creed, but to the grave disadvantage of the truth. In his view, the Jewish question, as it used to be called, has proved to be almost uncannily accurate. His view of the Jewish question has proved almost uncannily, I think in his view of the Jewish question, he proved almost uncannily accurate as a prophet. In one of his most sublime passages, he says, the liberal Jews of Germany will one day suffer a cataclysm the extent of which they can't begin to conceive of. Nobody will deny that at any rate this prophecy has proved to be only too dreadfully verified. He preached against assimilation in its very heyday, with full knowledge of what it was. For in his younger days, he had himself been in favor of it. Everything he said about the false position into which the assimilators had put themselves and their victims seems to me, on the whole, vindicated by the events that followed. Today, nobody can pretend not to know what he means by his reference to philosophical or geographical or historical alibis, to which human beings try to escape because they can't face embarrassing truths about themselves. Hess had observed the Jews were in fact a nation, however skillfully definitions were juggled to prove that they were not, and he said so in simple and to some people startling and very shocking language. One thing seems quite clear, and that is that the state of Israel, whatever attitude may be adopted towards it, couldn't have come into being if the Jews had been such as Hess's opponents supposed them to be, whether they were Orthodox rabbis or liberal assimilationists or violent communists. He has, furthermore, proved to be right in supposing that the Western Jews would not, of their own volition, choose to emigrate, whatever the difficulties they encountered in their various communities, because in the end they were too happy, too comfortable, too well integrated in them. He believed in natural science applied to create social welfare. He believed in cooperatives, in communal endeavor, in state ownership, at any rate in public ownership. And to a large degree, these principles have today been realized in the state of Israel, to a larger degree than is pleasing to those who favor other forms of social organization. Moreover, he believed deeply in the faithful preservation of the historical tradition. He spoke about this in language scarcely less fervent, but a good deal less biased and one-sided than Burke or Fichte. And this he did not because he feared change. After all, he was a radical and he was a revolutionary, but because through his most extreme and radical beliefs, there persists a conviction that there is never any need to maim or impoverish oneself for the sake of an abstract ideal, that nobody can or should be required to vivisect himself, or to throw away that which affords him the deepest spiritual satisfaction known to men, right to self-expression, right to personal relationships, right to the love of familiar places or forms of life, or beautiful things, or to the roots and symbols of one's own, or one's family's, or one's nation's past. Hess believed that nobody should be made to sacrifice the unanalyzable relationships, the central emotional and intellectual experiences out of which human lives are compounded, to offer them up even as a temporary expedient for the sake of some tidy solution deduced from very abstract, very impersonal premises, from some form of life derived from alien source, imposed upon men by artificial means, and felt to be the mechanical application of some general rule to a concrete situation which it obviously does not fit. All that Hess, towards the end of his long life, wrote or said, rests in the assumption that to deny what one knows to be true, to do violence to the facts for whatever tactical or doctrinal motive, is degrading and doomed to futility. The foundations of his beliefs, both socialist and zionist, were unashamedly moral. Moreover, he was convinced that moral beliefs played a major role in human affairs. And the socialist morality that he so pure-heartedly preached, as well as the type of nationalism that he idealized, have on the whole proved more enduring and more productive of human happiness than the more realistic solutions of his more Machiavellian rivals, both on the right and on the left. For this reason, he is surely to be counted among the genuine prophets of our own day, who said much that was new, true, and turned out to be of the first importance. This is the achievement of the communist rabbi, of the man whom Karl Marx, when he felt in a particularly good humor, used to call the donkey Moses Hess.